In a video I did earlier today, I talked about bulls, bears, and in-betweeners in the context of Canadian LNG projects. But I want to extend that to oil and gas in general, because it's really important that you decide, are you a bear, are you a bull, are you an in-betweener? So let's go through these and I'll explain what I mean, why it's important. So the bulls are on an absolute rampage. They're controlling the energy narrative. They've got us talking about Canada as an energy superpower. The Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is relentless in her argument for more pipelines, more LNG development, and essentially she's parroting the OPEC line. You can see all of her narratives are in OPEC press releases and their reports. But she's not alone. Tim Hodgson, I made the point in the LNG video that, is clearly a bull when it comes to oil and gas, as is Prime Minister Mark Carney, which is kind of a surprise, but nevertheless, that's where he stands as of this moment. And so is Donald Trump. Remember, energy dominance, right? The USA is now the world's largest producer of oil and gas. So he's doubling down on what he thinks is an area of American strength and using it as part of his bully tactics and trade war. Now, the bear side is interesting because we never hear about the bears. And, maybe some in the context of climate change, that kind of thing. But climate change is way down on the agenda right now for Canadians in the aftermath of Trump's, basically assault on our sovereignty. So bears, I interview a lot of bears, and people like Kingsmill Bond and Dan Walter of Ember Energy and Michael Liebrick and Professor Doyne Farmer. I mean, there's lots and lots of them outside of Canada. There's this whole debate taking place about how the world is electrifying, and electricity on the demand side, so we're talking about electric vehicles and heat pumps and electric industrial processes and on, are going to displace oil and gas after 2030. You're going to see a peak, 2029, 2030, and then there's going to be a decline. People like Kingsmill Bond said, look, we've studied technology change for 100 years. And, energy technology is following exactly the same path, the same S-curve. We've talked about this for a long time in these videos. And it's a done deal. Now it's going to play itself out over the next 25 years, and you can expect that oil and gas is going to be in its, on its deathbed by 2050. Then there are the in-betweeners. And I'm sort of in between, but leaning toward the bearish side, because I've read enough of the bulls' energy modeling, the OPEC, the ExxonMobil, U.S. Energy Information Administration, even some of the firms the forecasters that believe in peak oil demand by 2030, like S&P Global. They say, yeah, it's going to peak in 2030, but the hydrocarbon economy is very sticky. There's lots of infrastructure and industry. It's a huge industry. It's not going to just fade away. And so they see a plateau out to 2040 and then a long, gentle decline. So not growth, but still, not much change really over the next 25, 30, 40 years. Okay, I get that. But I can see where their argument comes from, but there are flaws in their assumptions. Like for instance, OPEC says, well, the biggest driver of oil demand in between now and 2050 is going to be increases in the global vehicle fleet. It's going to go from 1.6 billion to 2.9 billion, and 75% of it will be combustion engines, and which is roughly what it is today, 75%. And it's been going down ever since like in 2017, 2019. So the odds of the vehicle fleet growing and still remaining at 75% combustion engine, it's a suspect assumption. Very unlikely, in my opinion, that's going to happen. And there's a lot of assumptions in OPEC's modeling, which is why I'm not a bull. I think that the bears have basically got it right. The question is the timing. But each one of these groups has made a bet. And this is the thing. Nobody knows, there's many a slip betwixt cup and lip. And a lot's going to happen in 25 years. So everybody's making a bet. The bulls are making a bet that demand will not peak in 2030. It'll be strong way out at past 2040. And investments made today will, at the very least, have paid themselves off, by the time peak demand comes, if it ever does. That's the bulls. The bears are basically saying it's too late west, global north. China is totally in control of electric energy technologies on the supply side, wind, solar, batteries, even nuclear. The Chinese now kind of dominate nuclear plants, the construction of them, the most recent ones. And on the demand side, they make all the technology, electric vehicles and heat pumps and industrial heat pumps and on, a lot of the other technology that supports that, such as artificial intelligence and materials. And so it's hard to understate the amazing change in China over the last 20 years. And maybe this is most important. Industrial dominance and clean energy technology is a huge part of that from the Chinese point of view. Industrial dominance is the way they are going to overtake the Americans as the number one economy in the world. This is a geopolitical struggle. So it's not just about economics, it's not just about technology. There's a lot of government policy behind it in order for China to achieve its geopolitical ambitions. So people like Kingsmill Bond will say, forget it, China, the global north has already lost. The best we can do is minimize our losses and hope that we can maintain some kind of decent, lifestyle going forward, because we're not going to have the highest incomes. We're not going to be the richest economies, which is what we're used to, right? Have been since 1945. And then there's the in-betweeners. So if I'm an in-betweener, what am I betting on? I'm betting that if the bulls are correct, if the bears are correct, that we'll have enough time to pivot to something else. And so I've been arguing, because I'm leaning towards the bears, what I've argued is that Alberta, for example, should stop sending its bitumen off to American refineries or Chinese refineries or Indian refineries, and it should start making materials out of it. Stop burning it, start making stuff with it. Start building the industry now so that 10 years from now, if we start seeing a significant decline in oil demand, that there will be an industry that can be scaled up, and sell carbon fiber or asphalt binder or graphite or any number of other, materials that we might come up with. But there's another piece that's recently come on my radar, crude to chemical conversion. And this is something that the Chinese are already doing with their big petrochemical complexes like Hengli. And it's something that Saudi Arabia is working on, where instead of taking oil, refining it, and then using it in petrochemicals, you just go straight from oil to petrochemicals. And the advantages are obvious. So, and they're investing in that in a huge way. So the interesting thing here is that it's still too early to see where are we going? Which one of those is most likely? I mean, I can make a good educated guess because I interview a lot of people, read a lot of data. But really, still, it's at best an educated guess. And given the fact, the one thing we do know is change is coming. When it's going to come, how profound it will be is still open for debate, but change is coming. And if change is coming, then Canada should prepare for it. Okay, we might invest in more oil development. But what else might we invest in as a hedge, against risk that comes with change? We should think about that, and we're not, because our national conversation around energy is all about becoming an energy superpower. We got, stars in our eyes. We think that somehow we're going to increase the production of oil. Like Danielle Smith said, we're going to double it, from 4 to 8 million barrels a day in Alberta, which is ridiculous, by the way. And we're going to become a big LNG exporter from the East Coast and send it up through Port of Churchill in northern Manitoba and on the West Coast. We need voices to counter the bulls. And little word to my corporate media colleagues, you could do a little less cheerleading and a little more research, a little more basic journalism to get the view of the bears and the in-betweeners, because it's not all bulls, but that's all we hear about it. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next little while. We'll talk about the bulls in our journalism, but we're going to be talking, exploring in greater depth than we have to date, the case for the bears, and there's very strong cases and lots of work's been done on it, and the case for the in-between. So maybe between now and when next time you watch one of our videos, you can think for yourself, am I a bull, am I a bear, or am I an in-betweener?